We have got an hour today dedicated to handling difficult conversations. And the Women's Leadership Group, or Women's Leadership Circle, is something we started last month, and I'm trying to organize it for once a month in a last week of the month, not always going to be perfectly the last week of the month. So a huge thank you to all of you who are joining us, really appreciate it. And today I'm going to talk about handling difficult conversations. And because today is about difficult conversations, and it is quite a large group, I thought it'd be fun to use a little bit of technology and do things a little bit differently. So to start the conversation, what I would like to do is to go to this slide here. Can you see the slide there that says what makes conversations difficult? If anyone can just let me know if you can see it, because I just want to make sure that you can see what I see. Yes, thank you, Namala. Perfect. Okay, so if you go to www.menti.com and use the code 4005721, if you can go there on your computer or your phone and just enter your thoughts on what makes a conversation difficult. We'd love to hear from you about what makes conversations difficult. If you can just go there and type your thoughts and answers, that would be awesome. So menti.com and the code 4005721. What makes a conversation difficult?
I've got a security warning saying this is down.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, who is that? Julie. Have the others also got a security warning when they've tried to use Mentimeter?
Yeah, I also got one.
Oh, okay. Then we won't use it. That's very odd. Let's just use the chat. So in your minds, in the chat, just share your thoughts. What makes conversations?
Sorry, Chantel?
Yes.
It's normal. I got in, but when it was, just give me a second, it asked me to join with a, join a presentation. It has Mentimeter, join presentation. And when I clicked on that, then you can put in the code and click submit.
Okay, well, those of you who are getting a security issue, let's have it on the chat. Those of you who can use Mentimeter, let's use Mentimeter. But the question is, what makes conversations difficult? Perceptions, yes, perceptions. Thank you, Petroline. Emotions, emotional subjects. Lack of trust, fear, controversy, high stakes, the audience, admiration, the topic, different cultures, the context or situation, any other thoughts on what makes conversations difficult? Status, position. Those of you who've just joined, if you go to menti.com and use the code at the top of the slide, you can enter your thoughts there. Judgment, definitely. Fear, connection to a person. Poor communication skills. Nerves, nervousness. Opposing opinions. Any other thoughts? Deep emotional connection to the person. Yes, that makes it very difficult. Connection to the person, the unknown, anxiety, conflict, confidence. So there's a huge variety of things coming through here that make conversations difficult. A huge variety of things that stop us from wanting to have those conversations. So I'm curious, is there anyone who wants to come off mic and just talk a little bit about some of the thoughts you have about what makes a conversation difficult?
Chantal, it's normal again. I think it's sort of the unknown as well. You know, we're not we're not familiar with the people that we are communicating with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and sometimes it's you know, if it's a predetermined thing or it's pre-planned thing like a speech and stuff like that. You know, I think it's our anxiety. You know, when it comes to people, talking to people or strangers, etc. You know, I think it takes a little bit of getting to know people before you're able to communicate with them at a specific level, you know, or a level that it actually requires. But initially, I think most of us are wary when we're talking to people or strangers or people that we've just met. Yeah, I think our confidence level as well, you know, if we're introverts as such, you know, it might be difficult for us to actually start a conversation with somebody, but if somebody starts a conversation, maybe a topic that we're familiar with or something that we are familiar with, then, you know, it sort of get a little easier.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's based on who we are as well, you know, whether we're introverts or extroverts, or a mix of both, you know. Yeah, but I think it's mostly our wariness of the people we communicating with in terms of how well we know them.
Fantastic. Julie, I noticed you had your hand up.
I also... Sorry, can I go?
Yes, go for it, Angelique.
Okay. So I also think it's the fear of rejection, the fear of not having enough knowledge on a particular topic, the fear of failing, and the anxiety that comes with that. I think fear plays a huge part in this.
No, fear is a big contributor to that. Julie?
I was just going to say exactly what Angelique said. It's fear of so many different things. Fear of loss of face, fear of looking silly, fear of the consequences. I think fundamentally it comes down to fear of a whole lot of different things. Yeah.
Okay. Lorata? You've got your hand up, I think.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I think for me, one of the things that make conversations difficult or handling things difficult is if you have a conversation with someone whom you really admire and you are maybe about to disagree or have a different point of view with them, that makes it very difficult to actually voice out your opinion or, you know, say what you feel. For me, that makes it very difficult.
Okay, and I've got some more raised hands, but I can't see who they are. Hold on. Okay, Petroline, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's also based on our mental filters, right? Of how each one of us experience life, based on our experiences. So we don't perceive the same message or the same information the same way. And that can make a conversation difficult because I can tell somebody something and they perceive it the way I want them to, and I can give somebody else the same message and they can perceive it in a completely different way, just based on their mental filters and how they process information.
Correct. So they see the situation differently, each person. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Any other thoughts from the room?
Yeah, I would like to add that, first of all, good morning to everybody. This is Lakshmi from Singapore. See, I would like to add that lack of subject knowledge. For example, if I have to start a conversation or I have to join a conversation on leadership, and if my knowledge is very less or almost zero, I may not start a conversation, or I may not find it easy to join the conversation. So in that case, I might withdraw, or I might just be a spectator and just keep quiet. So end of the day, it's all about your subject knowledge. That
Okay.
sometimes it's difficult to be part of the conversation.
So subject
Thank you.
knowledge can give us confidence, is what we're saying.
Yes.
Fear comes from many places. I'm hearing a lot about fear. Any other thoughts to add to that conversation? Anyone else want to add something? I'm going to take you through a little video clip which I found yesterday, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it's worth sharing. So I'm going to play it for you guys. I hope you enjoy it as well.
Stressful conversations are unavoidable in life, and in business they can run the gamut from having to fire somebody, which is like the most gut-wrenching thing you will ever have to do, or admitting failure, that you really blew it, or another thing that you might have to do is deal with a customer who's really upset.
How about a smoothie? What's in that?
Smoothie's a juice drink. We want coffee.
And I think it's very natural to want to avoid those conversations like the plague. But especially in business, there's an epidemic right now of people that are unwilling to have uncomfortable conversations. Harvard Business School just did a study and they found that 67% of managers are uncomfortable talking to the people they manage. And this gets me to what I want to talk to you today. It is the secret to how to have a difficult conversation. Because what's critical is learning the skill of untangling your emotions from the subject matter and being able to go face to face with anybody and have that difficult conversation. There are 4 techniques that I use whenever I'm going to have a difficult conversation that help me stay focused on what I need to talk about instead of getting hijacked by my emotions. Number 1, I always start the conversation by acknowledging my responsibility in the mess that we have to talk about. Whether it's the fact that I've avoided dealing with this sooner or whether there's something that I've done that's contributed to the situation, I acknowledge it right up front. And one of the reasons why that's so important is because by accepting some responsibility, you're diffusing the other person's emotion, you're also honoring them a little bit, and it sets a much more level playing field for when you get into the difficult things that you need to talk about. It's also going to put the person that you're speaking to a little at ease, so they're going to be able to listen. Number 2, you want to have a goal. Never go into a difficult conversation without an outcome defined before you go into it. The reason why the outcome is so important is because this conversation is going to be a roller coaster. The person that you're talking to might get upset. You yourself might feel emotional at some point, whether you're angry or you're triggered or you get sad. And so when you ride the roller coaster of emotion, the thing that is going to stabilize your thoughts is the outcome that you're causing. You're having this conversation because you're committed to making the relationship better. You're having this conversation because this isn't working, and so we need to end it powerfully. You're having this conversation because you want to give somebody some feedback that's not so fun to tell them, but you're giving it to them because you're committed to their success. Okay? So that goal, you feel yourself getting emotional, you come back to it, you come back to it, you come back to it. Third thing you're going to do a lot in this conversation, you're going to listen and you're going to validate. So you're going to say what you need to say, and then the other person's going to react. And instead of arguing or debating, I want you to listen and I want you to validate what the person is saying. It may sound counterintuitive, but honestly, one of the most powerful things you can do in any conversation, whether you're fighting with your kids over curfew, or you're arguing with somebody at work over workloads, whatever it may be, is hear where the person's at.
Listen to me, listen to me.
The moment you say, wow, that must be really tough, what you're dealing with, or, oh, I totally get why you now were avoiding me. If I felt the way that you felt, I'd probably do the same thing. The second you validate somebody, they immediately stop defending themselves. It's unbelievable, actually. Unbelievable. You've got to try it. Validate, validate, validate. It is the most powerful thing. And then once, of course, they feel validated that you've heard them, second you validate somebody. And that's when you come back to the final thing, which is you're going to restate always the outcome. And that's when you keep coming back to it. Keep coming back to it. And yeah, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have all kinds of emotions come up because you've been avoiding this conversation. But I'm telling you right now, if you find the confidence and the courage to go and to start this thing, acknowledge your responsibility. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have all kinds of emotions come up.
Hang on, I'm just muting. Here we go.
Have an outcome in mind.
Sorry.
Validate the other person, validate, 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 and keep talking till you hit that outcome. You're going to be really, really amazed at how much easier these things become. And if you want to make it even easier on yourself, rehearse it with another friend first, somebody that's not involved in the situation. Because again, difficult conversations comes down to one important thing: the ability for you to separate your emotion about doing it from the things you actually need to talk about and the outcome that you want to cause.
Okay. So, what would be some of the thoughts? Petroline, your hand's still up. Is that from the last conversation? Any takeouts, any thoughts from that conversation, from that video clip? Something that struck you? Julie?
It's
okay. Hearing a voice.
Sorry, it's Nirmala.
Yes.
Me, I think it depends on the situation as well, what we're discussing or what the issue is. Communication would be dependent on various situations. So if it's in a business related situation, then you would deal with that conversation, like as per the video. It's important to acknowledge people. Listening is very important. Understanding what they're saying or where they're coming from is important as well. So that's basically what I've gotten from that.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Julie, your hand was up.
Thanks very much. I'm not sure I agree with this thing about separating one's emotions from the issue.
Okay.
I prefer the concept of working with your emotions and noticing what they're telling you about the situation. So, that's the only thought I have. The one thing that did strike me, the listening and validating. It's one of the most powerful, but it's just that thing about separating emotions always triggers me.
Okay. Elsa, you had your hand up. Oh, not on mute. Sorry, he's still on mute. Can we hang on, unmute you. Wrong one. Elsa, I can't hear you at all. There's something going on. Your sound's not working so great. Petroline, your hand is up. Was that from last time?
Sorry. I think the concept of separating your emotions comes from the fact that if you're in your emotions, you're in the situation. If you separate your emotions from the situation, then you come from a place of observation. So it's like, you can step out and observe what's going on, which gives you a better perspective of how to react. So it might be that is what they're referring to.
So you're saying rather it's about focusing on the facts and separating your emotions from the conversation.
Right. And you're still going to feel the emotion, but you're not going to let the emotion influence what you want the outcome to be. Because you're still going to get angry, right? You're still going to feel the emotions in your body well up, but it's about separating it. Then you can observe it. If you cannot separate yourself, that's at least how I see it. If you cannot separate your emotions, it's almost near impossible for you to observe what's going on.
Awesome. And I see Ilse's typed her thoughts here because we can't hear her. Authenticity requires you to be in touch with your emotions, but not a slave to it. Understand the emotion. A lovely thought there. I've got Sipusami up with her hand next, and then it's Angelique. Sipusami?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Just to add on the emotions, I think a lot of times the emotions cloud our judgments. And when she says we need to separate our emotions from the situations, I think the previous person that commented got it as I understood it as well, that in so many cases we become upset, we become angry, and your emotions actually revoke a negative response from the person that you're talking to. Then it becomes a defense reaction from that person instead of dealing with the actual issue that is at hand. So I think the emotion, especially as women, we are very emotional. So when we have to deal with situations that are difficult, then we bring all our emotions in even the tone when we speak. It reveals more of your emotions than trying to solve the problem. Then it becomes a fight instead of a problem-solving situation.
Fantastic. Okay. I see Anne agrees with Super Sami. And Tumi has said here, for me, it's about acknowledging to yourself the true emotions and the motive. Angelique, I think you wanted to say something.
Yes, so I basically am going to reiterate what Sipsani just said. Once emotion comes in, it clouds your judgment and you can't think clearly. And it's just emotion getting in the way. And when you're in an argument, it's like you are just flinging mud at each other all the time and throwing punches, which doesn't resolve anything. If you can just put your emotions aside and listen, and while the other person is talking, make notes of things that you want to go back to so you don't interrupt that person. Then when they're done, you can come back and now you can go back to all those things that they have just said and you can, discuss it. But like Sipsani says, when you take the emotion out, you can control your tone and you can think clearer because emotion is not in the way. And I found that out when I went to CCMA, and I've been there a couple of times with different staff.
Okay.
And when at CCMA, my other ex-employees are always very, very emotional and very angry and aggressive. And if you take your emotion out, you can actually just stick to the facts and get to what you need to get to, therefore achieving your goal. Like the that video that you posted. You can get to your goal because there's no emotion in the way.
Okay, interesting. Namala, your hand's been up for a while.
I think just to add to that as well, I think they've covered basically everything, but I think a lot of times we respond based on how we feel, and different situations call for different emotions or sometimes lack of emotion. If you're dealing with a personal matter, yes, you're showing love and yes, emotions are involved there, or if you're in a business situation, I think situations would call for you to be, objective or unbiased when you're dealing with various situations. That's basically what I just wanted to say.
Okay. Petroline, your hand's up again.
I want to concur with Namala, because we have to think about what is an emotion. All an emotion is you have a thought. There's literally physical stuff happening in your brain and hormones are kicked into action and you get a physical reaction in your body. That's what an emotion is. So if you think from it from that perspective, then you understand why you need to sort of detach your emotions, because then you can detach and observe and detach emotions from the outcome. Because you don't want, it's like, I think Angelique says she gets angry. It's like, because you want to keep that away from whatever outcome you want to achieve.
Chantel, just to add to that as well, we don't want to get too out of our emotions as well. We don't want to seem like inhumane or unfeeling or unemotional beings. We don't want to come across as that, because that would also bring about a trust issue with the person we're dealing with as well. If you're going to be too unemotional, then you're going to wonder whether should I trust this person in what they're saying as well. So we are human. We have these emotions, and sometimes, yes, we have to bring it out a little bit, so people understand, yes, it's coming from, from who you are as well as a person.
Yeah. And I think one of the things to think about is that emotions are messages from our brain. They're there to trigger thought. They're not there to control us. So for example, if you're feeling angry, it's a message to your brain to say something's going on here that's causing me to feel angry. Whereas if you're feeling sad, it's a different kind of message to your brain. And part of EQ is having the ability to recognize your emotion, acknowledge it, but to choose how you respond, to choose what you do with that emotion. And that is the challenge I think many of us experience, especially in the workplace. If you think about heated conversations, if you think about those very difficult confrontational conversations, sometimes what happens is we bring, they'd call it an emotional hijacking, where your emotions take over and you end up responding with too much of emotion. You end up almost having an emotional outburst, which is why many times women in leadership are sort of painted with a brush of, you are these emotional characters in the workplace. I remember when I worked in the factory, the number of times we had ladies in my office crying because they weren't quite sure how to deal with the emotions in the conversation. So it's a fine balance between emotion and not emotion. Julie, your hand is up.
Thanks very much. And I think you actually have introduced what I was going to say is, are we not confusing reaction and response in our discussion? In that I truly believe and have experienced that you can be fully in the emotion. I mean, the amygdala is going mad, etc. Chemicals are running, and you can be fully in that emotion and still choose to respond in a way that is respectful and honoring. So that's what all I meant by not separating, that you can be fully in it and still make a choice to be kind and generous, etc.
And you're getting a few thumbs ups here for that one, Julie. I'm seeing some thumbs ups. Yeah, now I think that's exactly it. It's emotions are messages from our brain telling us what's going on so that we can be conscious in our decision as to what to do next. Namala, your hand's up again.
I think in terms of responding, I think it depends on who we are as in terms of our personality, how we deal with our emotions, how we handle our emotions. If we anger easily, then I think we need to take some time and think about the situation before we respond as well. Because it's not about you being affected as it's the other person as well. When you respond, how is this you bringing out your emotions going to affect the other person as well? So that's important as well.
No, fantastic. Petroline.
I also think it's important that we distinguish between negative and positive emotions. Because you don't need to experience the negative emotion. You can teach yourself not to experience the negative emotion so that you can have a better outcome. But of course, you want to keep the positive emotions. That's the stuff that you really want to embrace and want to use to your advantage.
An interesting one, because there's a lot of theory on that, and I think what are perceived as negative emotions are sometimes given such a negative connotation. They are given such a negative, oh, you shouldn't feel those things. But sometimes those emotions are actually good for you.
Yeah.
Because think about...
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm thinking of the context of something like fear or frustration or anger. Sometimes those emotions are good because they're telling you that something's going on here that's not right. They're sending a message to your brain that says, I need to do something differently. Otherwise, this will continue. So if you think about a person who experiences fear and you're scared to talk to someone, you're scared to go and have that conversation because your boss is scary. That is a message to you in terms of, okay, I need to think about this. I need to reframe. I need to look at how I can handle this situation differently to get the result I want. And it takes us back to that outcome that the lady mentioned in the video, which is when you're having a conversation, if you're clear on the goal, it enables you to actually be clear and focus on your response and your choice of how to respond. But emotions are there to tell us stuff as well. They're not always, they might be negative, but they're also there for a reason, if that makes sense. I see some nods. And I've got two hands. Julie and Amala, who wants to go first?
I'll go first. When you know, like I said earlier, like we may respond, you know, harshly sometimes, you know, without thinking, you know. But it's important to, if we haven't done that, if we have done that, then we, you know, we apologize for our behavior or our response in that, you know, from what happened, I was upset about what you said or what was done, etc. So you speak about it as well. It's important that you bring it out in the conversation that this is how I felt about what was done or what was said. You know, sometimes we able to think about it and have that conversation later on. You know, what happened today? You know, I wasn't happy about it, or I was very upset with it. But and then sometimes we may, you know, start shouting and get angry and, you know, respond in a very you know, basically not the ideal way. But you apologize for how you responded. You know, it's important that you do that as well, because if you want to have a good relationship or conversation with somebody, then you, like she said initially, you know, you take responsibility for what has happened as well.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Okay, Julie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick one. I think we've done ourselves a disservice by labeling emotions good and bad. I think a more helpful way might be wanted and unwanted.
I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and there is a lot of research showing the undesirable consequences of not going through the full range of emotions. And there's an interesting book, if anyone, well, I found it interesting, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die.
Sorry, repeat that?
Feelings Buried Alive Never Die.
Please put that into the comments so we've all got it, if you can.
I'll do.
Thank you.
So just, you know, a bit of a reframe there about, you know, is the emotion good or bad, or is it just wanted or unwanted?
No, I like that. And I think what is important is that as we learn more and more about emotional intelligence, that we learn to acknowledge, recognize those emotions and become more conscious in our response. Because one of the biggest skills is to be conscious and to choose that response as we move forward so that we don't have what's called an emotional hijacking, where the emotion takes over, because that's not what we're working towards. I'm going to just quickly share the points, because I see there was a couple of comments in the comments about what are the points that were in the video. And I think it also might help the conversation a little bit, in that there were some really key points here. The first was acknowledge your responsibility. So actually acknowledge where you have responsibility. Someone's gone off mute. Who's that? Is it you, Isabel? Eek. We've got someone who's gone off mute. Hold on, let me find the person. Okay, Tepiso, no. You. Who's gone off mute?
Yeah.
Krishna, I think it's you.
You call me as Lakshmi.
Okay, there we go. I've quieted you. All right, so acknowledge your responsibility. Recognize that you are responsible and take ownership of that. Make sure you have a clear goal for the specific conversation. And this is something that I find many people aren't clear on. The outcome. What is it you want from this conversation? What is it you want to achieve? Because if you're clear on that, you can be a lot more conscious in your conversation about how you approach it. I remember having an exceptionally tough conversation with one of my managers many years ago. And because I was clear on the outcome, it turned the whole situation around. Because by preparing my brain, preparing my mind on the outcome, even writing my thoughts down, suddenly everything became much clearer to the other person as to what I was trying to say, because the emotions didn't get involved. I knew how I felt, but I was prepared. Listen, Validate, validate, validate. This is so, so important in life. If we don't listen, if we don't validate, they don't feel heard. If we continually try to defend a position, if we continually try to defend our actions, the other person doesn't feel heard. The other person feels like you are not hearing them. They feel like that they are not part of the conversation. They're not part of the process. And the one that for me is so, so important is restating the outcome and coming back to it. So start the conversation with what it is you are trying to achieve. And when the conversation deviates, bring the conversation back to what is the outcome. What is it that you are trying to achieve? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Are there any things in there that you guys would like to add in there?
Yeah. When you talk about conscious, okay, I think, do you mean empathic understanding? Because you used conscious, but I think it is more of having a empathic understanding or having a different perspectives. Do you mean that?
Yes. So it's about being empathetic as well. And I think the listen and the validate is where the empathy comes through the most. Because by listening and hearing what the other person has to say, you start to have this sense of empathy because you're taking the time to hear their viewpoint. You're taking the time to listen to them. You may not agree, but you still listen. You still acknowledge, you still validate. And I see Ilse's added a comment here, and I love it. Brené Brown says that the basis of all human connection is vulnerability. But the more important is to know that you are enough, regardless of others' response to your vulnerability. That is beautiful. Thank you for that, Ilse. Any other thoughts?
Chantel, I think in point 2, making sure that you have a clear goal for the conversation. It's not a one-sided thing. I think you speak to the person and find out, what they would like the outcome to be from that conversation that you're having with them as well.
No. And I think that's important, is you need to have a joint intent, but you do need to start with something in terms of that intent, in terms of preparing your brain for it. Any other thoughts?
Just about that as well. I think it's yes, you speak to them, find out what the outcome is as well, and it's about working together, to come to a solution or a resolution, based on whatever the issue might have been. How can we achieve that goal, rather than what can I do, or it's what can you do as well, or what can we both do to get to where we need to be.
No, perfect. Petroline, your hand was up.
I'm interested to understand from others how they would approach a situation where, because remember now you're sort of talking to the converted here, when you have the person on the other side that has no inclination of acknowledging their responsibility. They have no inclination of understanding what the goal is going to be. They have no intention of trying to figure out with you what's the goal. They don't care what, like really, I'm not talking about a person I'm talking about a person that you've been working with for years, maybe, that has absolutely no intention to understand where you're coming from.
Okay. And that's not an easy place to be. I'd love to hear what other people think. Any suggestions from the room?
So with regards to that, I think that is that person's fault to work on. And I don't think that you can correct it for them. You can.
You vanished, Angelique.
Want to listen. I don't think anything you say makes any difference. And I'm saying this because I've been in that situation quite often with a person like what Petroline's talking about. Where that person just does not want to listen at all. So even though you are acknowledging your responsibility and you have given the goal of where or what you guys want to achieve, or you're coming to a solution, if they're not listening, I think that is like one of the biggest, is in an argument or a discussion, whether it be personal or in business, if the other party doesn't listen, then I don't know how you would get past that. So if anyone else can give Petroline and I an answer, that would be fantastic.
Okay, sorry.
Yes,
Nirmala. I think it's about, you know, if you're working in an organization where there's other people as well in a team kind of thing, you know, look at having something like a team session, you know, team building session kind of thing, you know, so people understand what the goals are. Yes, people are who they are. Sometimes they're not willing to change as well, you know, and no matter what you do, I think we all at some stage, you know, we've had this negative attitude. It's like when we're working, it's us against them, you know, and we need to be able to try and change that mindset, because and that's, you know, by people understanding what the goals are and what the involvement is in within that team, you know, and how they are contributing towards our organizational objectives. You know, it's important that they understand these things, you know, so that their contribution, it must come across as a valued contribution. You know, everybody contributes in some way, and yes, everybody's contribution should be valued. You know, just because somebody is a cleaner or a receptionist, you know, it's you know, involve them, you know, include everyone. It's an organization. You bring in everybody, because sometimes we sit there thinking we have these thoughts, we have these ideas, you know, that we can contribute towards an organizational goal, you know, but nobody's ever asked us or nobody's ever included us in these things, you know. So it's important that you are inclusive, you know, make everyone feel valued. Yes, it is a difficult thing to deal with. You know, it would probably take a while to change people's mindset about what you know, what you want to achieve as well, you know, but I think if you keep at it, you know, don't just give up on somebody just because you know, because we've all come from a place when we're young, you know, we have this attitude, it's negative, very, very negative, you know. Some of us, we go get into a situation, into a job, and be highly motivated, self-motivated. And some of us are not self-motivated. We need others to motivate us, you know. So I think that's important as well.
No, fantastic. A common goal and a shared goal is critical. Julie, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, very briefly, in response to that, how do you deal with someone who's just not interested in meeting you halfway? There's the little 3-step thing that is quite successful, is to first acknowledge what you're observing in them. So, you know, I can see that you are feeling, I don't know, whatever it is, frustrated or angry, etc. You know, my goal in this conversation is X, Y, Z. What can I do to help you achieve your goal?
Yeah.
So it really does work quite powerfully that way.
No, it does. And I think acknowledging the other person's emotions, validation is critical. And that listening part, especially with a difficult person. It's not so much buttering or building them up. I think Angelique's written it here, but it's more around just hear their side of the story. Just let them feel heard. And then start working together towards a joint outcome. Laura, you wanted to add something. I see your hands up.
Yeah, it's to add really to what Julie's just said around the 3 steps. I think there's almost an earlier stage sometimes to the listening and validating, which isn't always possible, but sometimes these people who are so resistant to engaging in the conversation at all, they're not interested in resolving the situation. There's actually something else that's going on that's nothing to do with the situation. And sometimes it's possible to observe that and understand what's really driving their behavior. They may not even be able to articulate it themselves, but if you can spend time observing them, getting to know what their sort of driving or motivators are, then you come to that conversation with that almost background understanding. It helps you to approach it in a different way that then may help to resolve it. So it feels like another layer of that listening and validating, because it's almost you trying to assess what's going on behind the scenes, which they may not themselves articulate, even if you gave them space to do so, but it then informs the way you approach the conversation, I think.
There's some valuable points there, and I think this is something we're all going to struggle with as time goes on, but if we try something new each time, it will get easier. And I think with that in mind, there's a couple of things I just want to talk about. I did use this. Yes.
Sorry, Chantal, I just wanted to answer Angelique's question there on the chat. I think it starts, Angelique, you know, in terms of building. People want to be acknowledged. They want to feel valued. You know, I think it's us to try and motivate them. It may not solve your problem, but I think if we continue at it, you know, rather than think it's a lost cause after 1 or 2 attempts, you know, this is a continuous thing. Developing people, helping them succeed, or showing them, you know, that they can be successful, you know, and where that, what they're doing, you know, how they can grow, and, you know, where that would lead to as well. You know, people need to understand that, you know, you're not going to be stuck in this place. It's up to you, you know, it's up to you to learn whatever you can if you want to grow, you know. You cannot learn for somebody else, you know. They need to learn to be able to be motivated as well, but they need to understand, okay, that could take them there, but, you know, and also, you know, they shouldn't be thinking that, you know, it's a very short-term thing, as in, you know, if I do this, you know, but in 2 months' time, I'm going to get a promotion as such, you know. It's a career path, you know. I think when we're sitting with people in organizations, we must develop them in such a way that they are an asset to your organization, you know, but they can take that skills and to another organization and be great at it. You know, maybe the culture fit is not great for them there, but that shouldn't stop us from doing what we need to do for people that we work with.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm just going to bring us back to the iceberg principle, and I'm going to frame it a little differently to what's written on the slide here. But if we think of those individuals that we see as difficult people, what we see is only the tip of the iceberg. So their behaviors and actions, those are the things we see. And that based on that, we make the judgment that they're not going to change. We make the judgment that they are not able to change. We make the judgment that they're not willing to change. But perhaps if we spend some time digging beneath the surface and asking questions and getting to know that individual, and getting to know that individual in terms of what it is that they feel, what motivates them, what their belief systems are about, if we start to understand that stuff by asking questions, by listening, sometimes we can start to see a change in what they do and how they behave, because we are able to structure our arguments in a way that appeals to the stuff that is important to that individual. Because not everyone is motivated in the same way. Not everyone sees the same things in the same way. So I think it's quite important that we remember there's a whole lot of hidden stuff that we don't know that's going on in their lives that we can't see, that we don't know about. And that's the stuff we need to find out to help us make it change and to help us have those conversations. And in terms of a passing thought, I just thought I would end off, because we are getting towards the end now, with this quotation here. You're not learning anything unless you're having the difficult conversations. So although we find them difficult, I think it's really, really, really important that we also have the courage to have those difficult conversations, that we have the courage to engage with those difficult individuals, because the more we try, the more we practice, the easier it will become. It does get easier. It does get more, it gets easier with practice. It gets easier with time. It gets easier with experience. and perhaps you choose someone different to practice on until we are more confident. So I'm going to leave that with you as a closing thought, and I just thought if you guys want to share anything more around difficult conversations before we talk about perhaps what the next topics could be. Is there anything anyone would like to add in order to feel complete?
Chantel, I think yes, you brought about the iceberg. Yes, understanding people is really part of you know, it's an important part of it, you know. But people must be able to trust you as well. You know, there must be that confidentiality, and you don't take somebody's personal life, what's happening in my life, I came and shared with you, because so you needed to understand where I'm coming from. You know, I had an outburst and you needed to understand it. You know, something happened at home that, you know, I brought to work. But you shouldn't be take that and use it against me at some stage. You know, she's always having problems at home, that kind of thing. So there must be the confidentiality there, and there must be trust between people as well.
And a big one of that is also authenticity, a genuine want to understand that individual. Any other closing comments from the room?
See, when we talk about behaviors as the tip of the iceberg, we have to understand the intentions behind the behaviors. For example, somebody is not listening. Okay, there could be a hell lot of reasons. For example, as somebody said, his emotions may be overwhelming. He's not listening, or he has some problems. As see that understanding that intentions behind the behaviors key to get into the person. As you have rightly said, no, only we see the behaviors part. We don't see what's behind. Most of the people mask their intentions behind the behaviors.
Correct.
So that is where I think it is very difficult to persuade somebody, you know, who becomes like a stonewalling behaviors. Okay. And those things normally happens in an organization. Also, the personality of your person is something which is very important. Okay. Some personalities, no, it is, no, they don't open up very easily. Okay. You need a lot of push. Okay. That is why I think as a leader, okay, you need to understand the what type of team member you have. Now, where somebody, for example, today I have written a post about groupthink, where somebody will get into their shells and they don't come up open. Okay, then we need to, as a leader, to understand, okay, this guy needs a separate, okay, like in a group, you may not handle him, okay, in a team, but if you have one-to-one, he will open up, okay. So I think the intentions and personality also plays a role when we handle people who are not easygoers. I think that's what I think.
Agreed. I see quite a few people are dropping off the call quite quickly at the moment, so I've just put this up. I am launching the next Leading with Heart, which is a group coaching experience in emotional intelligence, mid-October. If any of you are interested, please do give me a call, and we will go into a lot more depth in terms of the EQ and stuff like that. If any of you have any suggestions for topics for next month, please just drop them in the comments before you go. And I will stay online a little longer. So if anyone has any specific questions, then I can address those questions. But a huge thank you to everybody who joined us. I really appreciate it. And I think it was fantastic to have such a huge response. I look forward to seeing you all next month. Okay. Laura, your hand's up. Are you